Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Common Life, a podcast from South Highland Presbyterian Church in Birmingham, Alabama. My name is Court Gatliff, and I'm the senior pastor at South Highland. And today I am in conversation with Sean Dietrich. Perhaps you know him as Sean of the South. He is a very popular writer and musician and storyteller here in Birmingham, but really throughout all of the Southeast and beyond. And recently, he went on a pilgrimage in Spain, the Camino de Santiago. And so I brought him on so we could talk about what he learned from that experience, among other things. So I hope you will enjoy this conversation. Sean Dietrich, it is good to have you on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
It's a privilege to be here, Court.
We've been trying to do this for a couple months now, it feels like, and we kept having to cancel. So I'm glad it finally worked out. So you might not remember this, but we've actually met in person before. You played a funeral here at South Highland. I guess, I don't know when that was. It was a year or two ago. You played it with Bobby Horton, who I know is somebody you've been touring with. But I didn't know that you and Bobby were going to be playing that funeral. And so I just showed up in my robe and I just kind of shuffled in and sat down. And then I heard some music and I was like, that's really good music. Like, when we have great music here, but you know, I was like, that's exceptional music. And so I kind of looked to see who it was. And I was like, I think that's Bobby Horton, who's, you know, kind of a local legend for sure.
Oh man. Yeah.
And then I saw you on the piano. And so we talked briefly after, but that was a couple years ago at this point. But
I do remember that now. It took me a second, but I got it now.
You wrote a column, one of your daily columns about doing the funeral here and how long of a service it was.
Bobby prepared me when we get in there. He said, be prepared. This is going to be a long one. And I thought, wow, this really was. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it from start to finish.
Well, yeah,
it was unlike the kind of funerals I grew up with, so I really appreciated it, actually.
What were the funerals like that you grew up with?
Well, they could tend to drone on and be long, but they were less based in like a tradition. They were more these long, drawn out, emotionally exhausting prayers and just weeping and wailing. And honestly, we were just all praying that we could get back to the fellowship hall where we could eat. So
yeah, that's right. That's right.
But no, That's actually one of the things I've enjoyed about my writing is I've gotten to explore so many different denominational traditions. It's been actually very, very enlightening.
Presbyterians aren't perfect, but we do a dang good funeral for the most part.
Oh, no kidding. And they also, since then I've met a lot of Presbyterians and I've noticed that you're a very cerebral congregation. You think about all sorts of things, and it's really interesting and wonderful to me. What a nice change.
We tend to be Presbyterians tend to pride themselves on being a fairly intellectual bunch. And some of that goes back to like the pioneer days, like our tradition required clergy to basically, they wanted to church plant, but they would have to go back to the Northeast to go to seminary before they could get permission to go plant churches. And so Baptists spread a lot faster, but then the Presbyterians tended to congregate in like downtown areas and be a little bit more sort of cerebral, as you said.
Well, I remember reading a book, one of my favorite books when I was younger, by Norman MacLean, A River Unstood, and his daddy was a Presbyterian minister, and he said Baptists were really just Methodists who could read, Methodists were just Baptists who could read. And Presbyterians were the ones who gave him the glasses.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Sean, for those very few listeners that I have who don't already know who you are, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to.
Well, I am a writer, and I stumbled into that by accident about, it's longer than I thought it was. I think it's like about 12 years ago that I kind of fell into it professionally, and it just kind of accidentally happened. And so anyway, that's what I do now. And I spend the rest of my time traveling around, and I perform kind of a one-man show that's kind of a mixture of humor and storytelling and music, because I've been a musician since I was a kid. And then the rest of my time I spend raising dogs. So I've got 3 big dogs. So we're a dog family.
What kind of dogs?
I got a bloodhound. I have an alleged Labrador, and I have a coonhound who is blind.
That's awesome. Well, you mentioned this, but you write a lot about life in the South, sort of broadly interpreted. You publish a column pretty much most days.
Yeah.
I know I've heard a couple of my members describe your column as sort of their morning cup of coffee. It's like part of their ritual of getting up and reading what you publish each day. What I'm struck by is the volume that you publish. I mean, writing a column every day is no small undertaking. Tell me a little bit about your writing process.
Well, it's varied throughout the years. The way it started becoming an everyday thing was right when I first began. People would email me and say, I look forward to your column, to what you post every day. This is before it was in like one newspaper. And I said, really, you look forward to it? That's scary. And, but I felt this kind of, expectation actually that people were going to be looking at it. So I started doing it every day. And then it became kind of a way that I could not process what was happening in my own life unless I wrote it down. So it became a meditative, contemplative practice for me every day to write. Even if I was experiencing something just purely for leisure or pleasure, I could really digest it if I wrote about it. So the process has changed over the years. I used to wake up and I'd get right to it, and I still wake up and get right to it. But the approach I would take was different. When I was a little younger, I would write, and it would be more or less kind of a humorous take on what was happening. And now, as I get older, especially after I finish walking the Camino, I wake up in the morning, and it's become more of a spiritual endeavor. I look around for what sorts of things maybe I'm supposed to be listening to, so I always say a little prayer before I start. And this is kind of new. I haven't done that. I never used to do this, but I'll say a little prayer, say, just take me out of the equation, kind of give me something that you feel like I might need to say, if I need to say anything at all. Lift my fingers on the keys, if you will. So anyway, that's the process now, which in newspaper business, we call it the daily miracle. And it really is. Sometimes you sit down and you think, what the heck am I going to write about today? And then the answer appears. So
one of the things, like I would say most writing on the internet and the general tone of the internet and social media, I would define it as pretty snarky and pretty angry often.
Yeah.
Like angry content does really, really well.
Yeah.
And then you have this really sort of disarming earnestness about your writing that is non-pretentious, and really sincere. I mean, incredibly sincere, I would say, is your style. And there's something really refreshing about that. Is that an intentional decision, or is that a posture you've had to cultivate? How did you sort of work your way into that?
I don't know. I think a lot of it has to do with just my personality, but also it does take some self-engineering and some effort to maintain a calm stance and on all sorts of things. Case in point, the Cracker Barrel issue. I mean, I was getting all kinds of emails. I mean, in one day, I must have gotten several hundred emails. And please weigh in on the Cracker Barrel issue. Please weigh in. And I'm thinking, weigh in on the Cracker Barrel issue? First of all, who cares what I think? I'm a school dropout. I have no academic pedigree. What in the world do I have to offer to the situation? Nothing. And it's all being offered. All sides are being presented. Some eloquently, some not so eloquently. It's all out there. But my thought was, the one thing that might not be being said right now is there is a middle road. There is a road that is not angry, and it's not necessarily in support, full support of, and full demonstrative support. I feel that might be missing in today's world. I remember my mother used to say, it's never as bad as they say it is, and it's never really as good as they say it is either. So there's no reason to get all worked up about it. And obviously, once everybody was extremely pumped up over this Cracker Barrel thing, the very next day, within days, there's this major shooting in Minneapolis. It puts it all in perspective. I think the best thing we can do in life and on the internet is to just stay calm and don't be too quick to say this is good or this is bad. Just stay right in the center and open to the possibility that you could be wrong, which I've made a living out of being wrong. And B, if you're right, shut up. just be nice.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the shooting, because your column today is sort of a meditation or a prayer on the shooting. And I just saw like the snippet on Facebook, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. Like, I wonder how he'll tackle this. And I thought you just did a really beautiful job it's basically just saying, Lord, have mercy. You're not a pundit, sort of. It's just, this is a terrible thing, and there's all sorts of reasons behind it, and there's all sorts of words that might need to be said later, but in this moment, Lord, have mercy.
Yeah, it was so interesting. I saw on television, they had this big vigil, and the first thing that happens was, that like always happens, is all the politicians get up from all sides and they bloviate. They just start talking and talking and talking, and they get worked up and they get angry and they start talking about what needs to be done, and the people are clapping, and I'm thinking, is that helping right now? I don't know. It could be. Maybe it is. But all I know is, as someone who's undergone trauma myself, there are moments that you just want peace, and I pray for peace for those families for sure. And I also recognize the politicians are doing what they think is right to help. So I can't judge them either, but I do pray ultimately for peace right now. But
no, that's good. Well, you just mentioned your time on the Camino, and this is one of the main things I wanted to talk with you about today. Is earlier this year, you and your wife embarked on a pilgrimage, really, to hike the Camino de Santiago.
Yeah.
For those who aren't familiar with the Camino, tell us a little bit about what it is and what drew you to this specific journey.
Sure. The Camino could be 2,500 years old, perhaps older. It's built on a Roman trade route, but it could be even older than that. Civilization's older than Rome. It's a series of footpaths that have connected, and they lead from in France, Saint-Jean-Pied-du-Port, which is really hard to say if you're from Alabama, all the way to St. James Cathedral, Santiago de Compostela. And it is a total of 798 kilometers, 500 miles in American. And you walk the whole thing by foot. There's a lot of what they call hostels along the way, but they call them hostels. Doesn't mean that they follow that strict definition. Some of them are more like shacks with maybe a sink, perhaps a toilet. We went out. There were some where we were going outside. There were some that were just sheds. There were some that were nice, but there was one time where we were in a hostel, and it was a bunk bed situation, and I looked down underneath my blankets right as I was getting ready to go to bed, drift off to sleep, and I saw maybe 1,000 ants on my leg, making a trail all the way up to my belly button. And I was so tired, I just looked at the ants and I thought, y'all have at it. And I put the cover back down. I went to sleep. Next morning, I woke up. They were still there. I said, morning, fellas. So we hiked for 40 days, starting from France all the way to Spain. And this is a pilgrimage dating back to the early days. This is probably the same path, at least the Catholics in Spain believe, that St. James walked to deliver the gospel to the Galicians. So you are walking through the breadth of Spain, and as you're out there, you're encountering a variety of landscapes. You start off going through the Alp or the Alps, or no, I can't remember the name of the mountain range. Anyway, big mountains. And I think it is the French Alps. And you cross over those, and it's windy and it's rainy, and you make it all the way to this kind of a desert area in Spain. And the whole time you're meeting these people. There's about 200,000 who walk the Camino every year for spiritual reasons. And most of them are for spiritual reasons. They come from every tradition. They come from American evangelical to Catholicism to the European Catholicism. We saw a lot of Koreans and Chinese and Japanese out there. I met a lot, and I'm still really, really good friends with a lot of them. And you make these, while you're out there, you form these immediate bonds. In a normal friendship, maybe between you and I, it would probably take, I don't know how many times it would take us getting together before we became kind of buddies. Out there, it takes about 10 minutes. And you're already very, very close. Where are you going to eat tonight? Where are you going to sleep? You're sleeping and eating in the same places. You develop a bond that's nothing I've ever experienced before. And it happens so quickly. And all your conversations are extremely deep. I didn't have a single shallow conversation in 40 days. I can't recall one. They were all, you'd meet somebody, you'd bypass all the fluff. There was never any of this. So what do you do for a living? It was always, what are you here for? What's your thing? And these conversations would take these incredibly spiritual turns. And I had a bunch of amazing experiences. I'll tell you about one because I could talk for hours and let you ask more questions. But there were 40% more pilgrims than there were beds on the trail when we were out there. And we were hiking, and we finished about 15 miles, and we had nowhere to sleep because everything was booked. So we stopped at a place that was a hostel/bar, and we said, do you have any rooms? No, you're going to the next village. And so we hiked to the next village, another 5 miles or so. We're up to 20 miles. Knock on all the doors. Do you have any beds? No room at the inn. So they start pushing us onward. We're walking, and the end of the day is near. We've walked about 35 miles, and we are shot, and we are dehydrated, and we're hungry, and we're tired, and my legs hurt. We're moving so slow. We're covered in dust. We have nowhere to stay that night. There's a lot of pilgrims who have been sleeping on porches and doorsteps, cemeteries on the side of the road even. And we really didn't want to do that, but we were ready if we had to. We'd been through cities. We'd asked if there were places to stay. It was Easter weekend. The whole country was booked. So we finally found this place in a little tiny nothing town, just dusty. And the lady said they had one bed, and it was a double, big enough for Jamie and I, but not hardly, but still big enough. We got up there. I took a shower. I got out of the shower. They said, dinner's ready. If you don't hurry up and get down there, you're not going to get any dinner. So there was a big communal dinner. That's how they do it. We sat down at this big table, and there was bread, big loaves of bread, and wine, and clay jugs and pitchers in this little adobe kind of a place. And we're sitting at this table, and there's people from every nation seated around the table, maybe 50 or 60 people. And they bring this peasant soup and set it on the table, and that's our dinner: bread, soup, and wine. And as we are digging in or getting ready to dig in, somebody from Austria, a woman, stood up and she said, I think we should all say the Lord's Prayer in our own language before we eat and give thanks. And so I heard the Lord's Prayer in German. I heard it in French. I heard it in Danish. I heard it in Dutch. I heard it in Russian. There was a lady from Bolivia. I heard it in Korean. I heard it in, it was fascinating. We heard it in almost every language: Italian, Spanish. And finally it came to me, and they said, will you say it in English? And I'm hungry, and I'm looking at the table. And I said, well, The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I'm sorry. I said, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. When I got to give us this day our daily bread, I was looking at the bread and it hit me. That is my bread for the day. I need that bread. I have been walking all day, and if I don't have that bread, I can't walk tomorrow. I've got to have that bread. It's important that I have that bread. And I've never looked at daily bread that way before. And I said, give us this day our daily bread, and I choked up. And there was a British guy beside me who just his name was Graham. He put his hand on my shoulder, and we ate a lot of bread. We drank the wine. We ate the soup. The next morning we woke up and did it again. And ever since, I've made the Lord's Prayer part of my daily routine. I say, give me my bread for today.
Well, to borrow the question that you said pilgrims ask each other, why were you out there? What brought you out to the Camino of all things?
I think I am the same age as my father was when he took his life, and I was 11 years old when that happened, and I never expected to reach the age that he died. It's kind of a weird thing that happens in a man's brain or a woman's brain. I've talked to a lot of people who've lost parents young, and you just don't always expect to reach that terminus. It's just something psychologically that happens. You follow this example of a parental figure, and you expect to kind of mirror their life. Well, I'm 42. 42 hit, and it was a big deal. I thought, I'm here. I'm still here. I can't believe it. And what am I going to do differently that my dad didn't do? And I began to ask a lot of heavy spiritual questions this year. The past 10 years have been a real spiritual journey for me, but it really culminated this past year. What am I going to do with the time I have left? And I've always been wondering this, but I really wanted to put feet to that idea this year. And I thought, well, I want to know what it means to be human and comfortable in my own skin and enjoy this relationship that I have with the great artist. How do I do that? And I didn't have any answers. I didn't have any answers. And I thought, my wife and I were talking, we were in Lake Martin, floating around in a tube. We were talking about this very thing. And I didn't know anything about the Camino. And she said, well, what if we walked the way of St. James? We got rid of all of our stuff just temporarily and just lived like peasants. And you're a homeless person for 40 days. I said, well, that sounds quite amazing. And frightening at the same time. And so we did not even think twice about it. That week we just booked airline tickets. We cleared the schedule, and we had no idea what we were getting into. And we got out there, and it changed my life. It changed everything. There's a before Camino Sean, and there's an after. So
one of the I thought most moving columns that you wrote from your time on the Camino involved you leaving your cowboy hat behind. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. My dad used to wear cowboy hats, and I got this cowboy hat in his hometown, and I got it because it reminded me of him. It was a very tough trip that I took to his hometown. It was a long, long time ago. And I got it in memory of him, and I wore it. I've worn it for, decades. And it's all beaten up and worn, and I really loved that hat. It fit me like it felt good on my head. And there's a place on the Camino called the Cruz de Ferro, the Cross of Iron. And you go and if you so inclined, you walk up this hill and you leave an object that you choose to leave behind and never more let it torment you, I guess is a way to think about it, or to never more let it occupy any real estate in your brain. There are so many objects that form this hill that leads up to the cross. It's almost worthless for me to try to describe it. If you can imagine a small mountain made of objects and little stones. A lot of people pick up stones on the path and they'll write on them something that they're leaving behind, or they'll paint something on them, or they'll hold them through the whole Camino and then leave them when they get to the cross. There's pictures, there's articles of clothing, there are poems, flowers, you name it. And it mounds up, and it's so enormous. And you walk your way on this path of trodden objects and rocks to the top of the cross. And you look at it, and you see all these faces on the images that people have left. I miss you, Dad. I miss you, Mom. Or this is for my brother who, took his life. Or whatever. And you see all this, and you're so overcome. And I realized that I've been carrying around this hat for a long time, this memory of Dad. And even though I carry it some ways with affection, in many ways I carry the memories, and they hold me back. And I live too much perhaps in this past. And so I decided that I was going to symbolically lay it down and not pick it back up. And as of leaving that cross, I wanted to truly be free of letting the obsession for things that have happened to me in my life that I don't love, things that are remnants of that relationship I have with my tormented father. I decided I would try to leave that behind once and for all. And it's amazing what a symbolic act can do. A symbolic act can mean so much to a person. I took my time taking that hat off, and I put it down at the cross upside down, because you never set a hat on its brim. That's the cowboy thing. And I set it on its crown, and I looked at the cross, and I thought, I don't know if I can do this. I really don't know if I can physically leave my hat. I like that hat, and I don't have anything to protect me against the sun. I don't know that I could do this. And I began to walk away after standing there looking at it for about 15 minutes. I was walking away, and I turned around, and I went back to go get it. I stopped, and I turned back around, and I started walking back down. I stopped again. I turned around. I was going to get it. You know what? Who cares? It's just an act, and no one cares if I leave my hat. And I turned around, and I said, no, this means something to you, and you need to follow through on this. So I turned around, and I left. Tears streamed down my face. And there's all sorts of people at the bottom who have been watching me. And you become really close with people you've never met. And I hadn't even met these people until that day, until being there at that cross. And we were all hugging and crying, tears streaming down our face. And they're saying, you can do this. You did the right thing, and your dad's with you. And all these wonderful, wonderful, supportive comments. And the rest of the day I walked, and I felt so much lighter. And I think I've left, if I haven't left it all behind, I've left the majority of some of the things that have haunted me behind.
One of the things that you also wrote is that you wrote about prayer a good bit on the trip, because it is, it's a spiritual pilgrimage. And one of the lines that you wrote that stuck out to me is you said that prayer is asking God to change you. And you just described how you had this sort of before and after the Camino experience. And so how would you summarize how you've changed because of that experience?
Well, prayer has changed. Prayer has become much more of a communing time, a meditative habit. It's not at all asking for things. I don't have anything to ask for. And even the things I do know that need to be completed, people need to be healed, things like that, he already knows. He knows before you ask. So what's the point? The point isn't to beseech God like Santa Claus to do something. And that really became clear to me on the Camino. That's not the relationship. The relationship is God has, for me, imparted the fullness of himself to me. I have access to this. I have access to the most amazing, creative, loving force that will ever be known, the only force. And all I have to do is practice getting in touch with it and God does the rest. I don't have to beg. I don't have to strive. I don't have to ask. I don't have to seek even. He'll find me, and he has. And so all I do is sit in quiet and acknowledge that. And if I can shut the human filters off long enough, the human thoughts that keep going and arising like a droning television in the background, or like multiple tabs open on a browser, if I can shut them down long enough, figure out how to do that long enough, it is overwhelmingly clear how present he is, how present God is. And you learn this out there, I guess, if you want to, if that's part of your Camino, because there is nothing to do out there but walk. There are many places where you don't have cell phone service. You don't have any means of communication with the outside world. My wife would be a mile ahead of me because she's a little drill sergeant. And I'm walking alone in the dust, and I'm just praying. I don't know what I'm praying for. I'm just praying. My mouth is kind of moving, and I'm focused on my feet. I'm focused on what I'm seeing, on God. It's amazing. So that has changed me as far as I don't feel the need to strive for much right now. I hope I can keep that in the forefront.
It feels like so much of modern life is designed to basically prevent us from praying in a lot of ways. It's fast paced, it's loud, it's distracting. It really is almost designed to prevent contemplative thought.
Yeah. Christianity. I grew up fundamentalist Christian. I wish I could change that, actually, because the branch of Deepwater Baptists I come from, we were tough, tight people. If only God would have had the wisdom to make me born a Presbyterian. We did not value prayer in the way that I believe prayer really is. What we taught and what we valued was hitting your knees and begging. And that is not at all, I believe, what prayer is. I mean, even you look at Jesus's last prayer in the garden, thy will be done. He was praying to be changed. He was praying for his will to be subverted, which is amazing that he would pray for his human will to be. That's not begging for a circumstance to change. I find that fascinating. And I find that fascinating that he asked his disciples to watch and wait with him for an hour. I don't know anybody who could do it for an hour in modern day. 1 hour? I mean, we got a phone that is constantly competing for our attention. So I learned a lot. We passed a part of Spain where St. John of the Cross apparently had passed before, and he wrote the book of poetry, A Dark Night of the Soul, when he was in prison. And he was in prison in this tiny, tiny little pen with no light, purely black. And he had one little window, I think, that was a slit. And finally he escaped somehow when one of the guards left a door open. He'd been in prison for multiple years with nothing to occupy his time, in the dark, barely eating enough food. He gets out and he goes to this convent, and these nuns rescue him. And they say he's not there. He pleads, they give him sanctuary. The first thing he does when he's in their care is ask them to get a quill and paper and write down the book that he's been writing in his mind for those years that he's been trapped in prison. And I read some of that book while I was out there because I found it in a little hostel. It was just right on the table. And what I find is that the way he got through that imprisonment was through this kind of prayer that we Americans don't even really acknowledge. They have meditative practices in the Orthodox religions, Orthodox traditions. They have meditative practices in the Catholic mystic traditions and all that. But we Americans don't often embrace the contemplative prayer or the meditative style of just sitting and feeling the earth beneath our feet. There's a great poem that I read by St. Patrick that I found incredibly inspiring while we were on the Camino. And it was this: be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be.
I think we're far too pragmatic about our prayer in American Christianity. We want it to be very effective. We want it to effective in terms of how we define that, right? We want it to accomplish something and be productive.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think that's not, and there's there's a place for some of that and very specific things, but
Sure.
I think in general, viewing it as a relationship that you're cultivating is a way to a richer and deeper spirituality.
I think it's calmer too. It feels good. If I had a relationship with my wife that was always me asking her with a list every day of things that need to be done, that's not much of a relationship. And I would never speak to her the way that a lot of American Christians speak to God. I would never talk to her that way. I would never say, Jamie, you know your name is Jamie. You know your name is Jamie, and I know that you can do everything. So I'm asking you, Jamie, right now, Jamie, if you would please, Jamie. I mean, come on. What are we doing? Like you said, though, I've seen incredible things happen when intentional prayer is focused on one need for people. I've seen healings happen that are amazing in my writing. And so there is a place for that. But there's also just a place to be.
So not everybody will have the ability to book a flight out to Spain and take 40 days off and to kind of embark on this particular type of pilgrimage. So what would you say to someone who's listening and is feeling maybe some of that discontent or restlessness, or they're longing for a deeper spiritual experience, or they could use a pilgrimage, frankly?
Well, that was the overwhelming message of the pilgrimage when it was over. We all arrived at Santiago. The chapel is incredible. St. James's bones are on display. It's got all the big things. It's a scene that's a lot like heaven. You get there after you've been walking for 40 days. They're all waiting there for you. All the people you've met along the way, through the ups and the downs, through the highs and the lows. They're on the pavement, on the stones, weeping or laying down, having a picnic, or they're just overcome. And you yourself are overcome. And there's the gate to the church, which is open. And you, as filthy and disgusting as you are welcome to walk in to this beautiful palace. It's the closest thing to heaven. And yet, the thing you learn when you finally finish the Camino is this wasn't really the Camino. This is the Camino, what we're doing now. This is the walk. This is the path that we're on. And so as we hugged and we said goodbye to people we knew we'd probably never see again in person, the phrase that kept getting tossed around that day was "Buen Camino forever." So you say "Buen Camino" to everybody you see. It becomes second nature, kind of reflex. Good way, bon chemin in French, yo te veo in Japanese. What did we say? I mean, we learned it in every language, and yet we were saying it to each other: "Buen Camino forever." Have a great way, have a great journey. This journey of life. So when I came home, I realized that this is the Camino. We are walking a path. And some people you might walk and you might be together, and it might be just your partners for the day, and they move on and you linger back, or vice versa. Some people will be your partner from the beginning to the end. There will be mishaps, there will be bad things. But if you view it as my mother used to say, the difference between an ordeal and an adventure is your perspective. This is an adventure, and we're here to learn some cool stuff. And that's the Camino, and that's life. And so I would say, frame life a little differently. Look at it as a pilgrimage from point A to point Z, and all the points in between are your little classrooms.
Well, thank you for taking the time to write about your journey, so that those of us who couldn't be out there with you could still learn and contemplate some of these things ourselves. And I'm
absolutely. It was, I said I wasn't going to do it when I went out there, and I felt that there was way too much to not share.
Well, that's what was funny, because one of your first posts was like, all right, I'm signing off. You'll hear from me in 40 days. And then we heard from you every day, which was
every
great.
day. There was no way I could not do it. The first day I told Jamie, I said, I can't not write about this. This is huge.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful that you did, and I know a lot of other people are. Speaking of writing, you have a new book coming out in October. I got it right here, over yonder. Sean Dietrich. You've written a ton of books. I don't know which.
None of them are any good.
This one's good. I had a chance to read it, so I'm grateful for the preview copy. So thank you for that. Tell me a little bit about writing this book. I appreciated that there's sort of a troubled clergyman in the book, and I was just taken up with the story. And there's a treasure hunt, and there's some violence, and there's some good Southern culture. Tell me a little bit about writing over yonder.
I like imperfect people, and I like imperfect, flawed family units, which is what I come from, and I love characters because my life is full of them. So I wanted a story about a man who was supposed to have all the answers, who had made a mistake, and who didn't, who admitted to not having the answers. And I also wanted to write a love letter to fatherhood, if you will, because the best fathers, I think, are the ones who have no idea that they're screwing it up completely, and they're messing everything up, and yet somehow, through divine mercy, everything turns out the way it needs to, and you turn out the way you're supposed to. And I'm not even sure if that's in spite of that father figure or because of it partially. So those are the themes I deal with in the book, and I enjoyed writing it. I really did. I said a lot of things I had kind of wanted to say and about spirituality that I hadn't ever said in books before. So that was fun. That was fun to be able to meditate on that and articulate it somehow.
Well, yes, great. I don't want to give too much away or anything for the listeners, because I think people should read it. But I really did enjoy it, and I kind of cruised through it pretty quick. So it moves at a good pace. You're a good storyteller.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
I have no idea what I'm doing.
None of us do. That's the good news. All right. Last question. Will you help settle a debate for me?
Sure.
You are, your sort of performative name is Sean of the South. You're something of an authority on Southern culture, for whatever that could be. There's a debate whether or not I am actually a Southerner. And I've gotten some pushback from Southerners about this fact. So here are the facts, and you can help me decide.
All right.
I was born in New Hampshire. Okay. I was born in New Hampshire. Grew up most of my childhood in the suburbs of Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
I moved to Memphis when I was 15.
Okay.
And I've been in the South ever since. I went to an SEC school for college, University of Tennessee, and I've been in Birmingham for about a decade. So I've been down here for a while.
Yeah.
I like to claim the title of Southerner. I think what pushes me over is that both of my parents are born and raised Southerners.
Okay.
So what do you think? Can I, in good conscience, call myself a Southerner?
Absolutely. I mean, I met a guy. Where were we? I think I was in New Jersey, and he was a New Jerseyan, born and bred in New Jersey, but he went to school in Tuscaloosa and played football. And we were sitting at breakfast one morning, and he said in his Jersey accent, "Am I a Southerner?" And I said, "Man, if you play football in an SEC school, you're as Southern as cornbread." The thing I like about the South, and this, I believe this with all my heart, because it's funny in some small towns, if you're not born there, you're not really from there in the South. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I think that might be true all over the U.S., but like I can remember the mayor of Monroeville telling me one night when it was an event, and he was sitting next to me. He said, "Yeah, I came here when I was in kindergarten to Monroeville, and people will constantly ask me, they say, 'Well, where are you from?' You say, 'Well, I'm from Monroeville.' He say, 'Yeah, but you're not from here, aren't you?'" Kindergarten. But there is something about the South, and I do believe this is true. You can be from if you go to a northern town, if I were ever to go to a northern town, I would never really be a northerner. They would never really happen. They would never really call me a northerner. If I went out west, they would never really call me a westerner. But you can come to the South from just about anywhere, and you can become a southerner. They will give you that title. The hospitality, I think, here it envelops a lot of people. So in my mind, you're a grade A southerner.
All right, I'll take it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Well, Sean, thank you for your time today. Really enjoyed following your journey on the Camino, and look forward to continuing to reading your columns and reading your books and listening to your music. Thanks for all you do.
Oh, thank you for having me, Cord. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Common Life. You can find more of Sean's writing on his Facebook. He's on Instagram. He's all over the place. Very popular. Won't be hard to find. His new book is Over Yonder. It's a great story. You should pick it up when it comes out in October. Thank you, as always, to Jeremy Moore for providing our theme music. You can find more of Jeremy's music on Spotify or wherever you listen to music. See you next time.